Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God. Thank you.
To make sure folks can hear us okay, but I think we're good.
Can I continue? Are we good? I'd like to take us to agenda item 1.2, our land. We acknowledge that the land on which we are gathered today is unceded territory of the Wiyot people who continue to live and thrive on this land today. It is surrounded by the traditional, ancestral, and present homeland of several indigenous nations, including the Hupa, Karuk, Natali, Tolowa, Wallahi, and Yurok, that make up Humboldt and Joe. Thank you. Move to agenda item 2.1, general public comments. Were any submitted? There are no public comments, so we will move to our action discussion items, 3.1. First, a review of minutes of the February 23rd, 2022 quarterly meeting. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
I move to approve.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Objections, the minutes are approved. That takes us to agenda item 3.2. And this is a discussion item which will be revisited during our regular trustees meeting. The subject is Measure Q bond refunding. There are several attachments. I am hopeful that someone from Morgan Stanley will help us move through these attachments with some clarity. So is Karna Kemba online?
Good afternoon to the board. I am online.
Oh, good afternoon, Carmen. It appears that someone else has joined us. I don't know if that's someone from your group or...
No, yes. So I also have Joanna Bose, who's the district's financial advisor on, and David Kasnokas from Stradling, Yoker, Carlson, Roth. And David is bond counsel to the district. David is best suited to go through all of the number of attachments here. I will speak to you briefly about the refunding update, which last week I know we had a little bit of issue with sound.
It was a big issue.
Yes.
Thank you for your patience with that and for your willingness to join us.
No, most definitely. So, you know, what I'll do is, I know you've seen the presentation already. Wanted to give you a little bit of an update in terms of the market itself. Again, you know, the market is really driving a lot of this. So, today geopolitical climate has led to even higher energy prices, adding to the burden of inflation. The central banks in inflation fighting mode. Sorry, do you guys hear me?
I'm hearing you now, but you were cutting out.
Oh, that's strange. So, again, the geopolitical environment is really leading to higher energy prices, adding to the burden of the inflation. Central banks are in inflation fighting mode, and they need to decide whether to prioritize inflation or growth. Investors this week have been divided on whether the Ukraine conflict will lead to more tightening from the Fed to battle inflation, or less tightening to battle the economic fallout. So, generally, when we see geopolitical issues, there's a flight to quality, which is going towards U.S. Treasuries. We saw that on Monday with a 15 basis point decrease in the 10-year rate. And then we're seeing that again today with about 11 basis points decrease. However, we're in a strange situation here because there's a dual aspect here with the anticipated rate hikes to combat inflation. At Morgan Stanley, we expect the Fed to continue to increase rates starting in March, and we're looking at 150 basis points tightening through the year. And so, as we look at your refunding, a week ago it was slightly below 5%. It's closer to 5% now, and we'll continue to monitor that as we go through. Joanna, anything else to add there?
No, nothing for me.
And then I'll turn it to David to go through the documents that you have in front of you. David?
Thank you.
Sure. Hi there. My name is David Kasnoka. I'm a municipal bond partner at Stradling, Yoka, Carlson, and Roth. I've been the district's bond counsel for a long time. The way in which community college districts refinance outstanding debt is through the issuance of refunding bonds authorized pursuant to the resolution that's on the board's agenda for this afternoon. There are two key rules about general obligation refunding bonds. One is that all of the benefit of the refinancing has to be delivered to taxpayers, and that none of the economic benefit can be retained by the district. The second rule is that the maturity date of the bonds being refunded cannot be extended by the new 2022 refunding bonds. So savings cannot be generated by kicking the repayment can down the road. So the maturity date of the 2022 bonds is going to be the same as the maturity date of the series of bonds that are being refinanced. Having said that, the resolution authorizes the issuance of the bonds, noting with importance that the refunding bonds are paid exclusively from the levy of ad valorem property taxes, much the way the bonds previously issued by the district are secured. And the documents are quite explicit that the general fund of the college is not responsible in any way for the repayment of the bonds. The resolution, in addition to authorizing the issuance of the refunding bond, approves these supplemental materials that are shown in the agenda package. The first of them being the Escrow Agreement. So when you sell refunding bonds, the proceeds of the bonds are deposited into an account held by a financial institution until the date in which they can be used to pay off the bonds that are being refinanced. So the money is held in escrow, and that's why we have this agreement for the deposit of the bond proceeds. So the way in which taxpayers
David?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, yeah, Colleen. I'm wondering if we can ask questions during your presentation, or do you want us to hold on?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer questions. Go ahead.
The question that I had, you made reference to a couple minutes ago, and that was one of the rules that all benefits must be delivered back to the taxpayers. And it was a question that I had on one of these resolutions. What's not clear to me is, what does that look like? How does that happen? How do we ensure that all benefits are delivered back to the taxpayers?
Well, the mechanics of the transaction involve the issuance of the refunding bonds, and there will then be generated a debt service schedule that will indicate how much taxes have to be raised each year to generate enough money to pay back the 2022 refunding bonds. And that schedule of repayment, when compared to the schedule of repayment of the bonds being refinanced, should reveal that the total debt service on the 2022 bonds is lower than the debt service on the bonds being refinanced. That new repayment schedule is delivered to the county tax collector and replaces the repayment schedule of the bonds which have been refinanced. So the county is being instructed to levy the reduced amounts of property taxes that are necessary to pay for the bond issues that are outstanding at the district. So 100% of the net proceeds of the series of bonds are going to be deposited into the escrow account. The cost of issuance are going to be paid for from those refunding bond proceeds. That's why I say net of the payment of cost of issuance. So the only deposit of the bond proceeds is going to be in the escrow account for the sole purpose of paying off the old bonds. That's how you get the comfort of knowing that all the money, all the benefit is going to the taxpayers.
Thank you.
So there's a purchase contract that you see. That's a 20-page document that if the bond transaction goes forward, this document, the purchase contract between Morgan Stanley and the Community College District, is the you agree to sell and they agree to buy the bonds at a fixed price. But the most important of all the documents from the lawyer's point of view is the bottom one that's listed, the preliminary official statement, POS. The way community college districts communicate with investors is through the preliminary official statement. And that document's governed by a whole variety of federal security laws. So we've prepared that document and in the process of finalizing that document for you with the district's assistance and input. And at the end of the day, that document is what is being delivered to potential investors. And it is against the content of that document that they will make their decision as to whether or not to buy your bonds or not. And so we're diligently working to gather all material information about the district, its tax base, its financial condition, so that it can be included in the POS and provided to investors. So the resolution approves the current form of each of these 3 extra documents.
May I interrupt at this point, Dave? It's Colleen again. I did have a question about that particular document, POS, the 20-some page document you just referenced. It seems to me there may be an error, I would say, in it because it refers to Mendocino County as being part of our district. Mendocino County was part of our district during the initial bond offering, but this is referencing the 2022 general obligation refunding bonds, and Mendocino is no longer part of our district. I don't know if that's something that needs to be addressed, or maybe I am misreading this.
That is an item that is being addressed, and the transfer of property that occurred a few years ago between Mendocino College and yourselves, that will be reflected in the POS as we move forward. So that would be removed from this document we're currently looking at. I mean, it would seem to me that potential buyers would think that Mendocino is still part of our district. Yeah, that's going to be removed, as that POS is a living document. It's going to be worked on and edited right up to the time that we provide it to investors, and we've received that comment already. And so that change is being made.
Thank you.
Can I also add one thing here? You know, in the resolution, you'll see, as we've talked in the past, that there is a net present value saving threshold of 5%. This was based on a previous conversation there. And so this having a threshold in the resolution, David, can you speak in terms of the parameters there that we have to make sure that we hit? And if we don't want to limit ourselves there in terms of removing it or adjusting that?
Well, it's comparatively uncommon to have in the resolution a minimum savings threshold, in part because the marketplace is volatile And you always don't know whether it's going to be $1 higher or $1 lower when the time comes to sell the bonds. So if it were me, my advice would have been not to include a savings threshold in the resolution, but rather to instruct the staff that the board has a goal of saving 5% and delegate to the superintendent president the authority to make a decision as to whether or not 4.99% savings is achievable and desirable. But I don't think we should have that in the resolution. But
Yeah, that seems, again, it's Colleen speaking, and I'm looking at my colleagues and President Flamer. That seems very reasonable, as long as President Flamer does still have the authority to say, no, that's gone too low. Right? That's what we're saying?
That's
I
right.
don't know if it's me.
Carmine, this is Joanna Bose, your municipal advisor. So I understand what Mr. Kasnoka is saying. I think what you have to decide as a body is whether or not there's a percentage that is not acceptable to you. 3% is the industry standard for tax exempts. 5% has been for taxables. So if you don't have any guidelines, you can have verbal guidelines, but does that meet a standard that you as a body and the board will want as a minimum of savings to the taxpayer?
Yes, thank you. So the resolution that David is referring to is the one from Julia Morrison, resolution number, whatever it's going to be. So what is being proposed, although this would be Vice President Morrison's responsibility, is to change Section A of that resolution. Am I following this correctly? So in Section A, it says, Section 4 of the resolution states that the maximum underwriting discount, blah, 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 is 0.5%. So that would be changed?
no,
Section 4?
Yeah.
It's 4. Right there.
I see,
Section
in
4.
Section 4 of
787.
what we, yes, thank you, Trustee.
that,
But it also would,
that should be taken out, I think.
My understanding of this, what David and Karma and Joanne are telling us is that we don't have to put a threshold in the resolution, but there can just be a common understanding or common goal shared with President Flamer and myself of what you want the savings to be. Have that right?
That's correct.
so before we proceed to our board meeting, just so the audit committee is clear on this, we would be forwarding this resolution with the deletion or the recommended deletion of that one piece of Section 4. Would it be advisable to include in the resolution the understanding?
I would recommend not.
Okay.
However, I would recommend adding it to the motion to approve.
It's in the minutes too.
Correct.
Keep it in the minutes. Okay. I'm looking at my trustee colleagues. Is this all?
Yeah, I was just wondering how you're gonna word it in the motion.
I think the wording of the recommendation would be something like, I make a motion to approve the resolution with deleting the phrase, and that the district realize at least 5% net value savings, but the board instructs the superintendent president and the vice president of administrative services to know that that's our target savings and that every effort should be made to achieve an outcome as close to 5% as possible.
I'm happy to make that motion.
Good. I was gonna delegate it to you.
If I could please,
I have a second.
if we could please not have Julia on it, because the board would direct me personally as a position, and then I follow through with
Yeah.
cabinet.
So trustee Big, and your
Yeah, I'm in the motion that it's only reference to President Flamer, no reference to Vice President Morrison.
Okay. Alrighty, I think we are in agreement that makes sense to move forward. I really appreciate this advice and the language you just provided. Thank you.
Okay.
So where do we go from here?
Call the question.
Oh, I
No,
wasn't
this-
sure if anyone wanted to say anything else from our group joining us. I actually had a question for the representatives from Morgan Stanley. And
So do you not want to approve the resolution until you get that question answered?
It's not an action item.
Oh,
The board
not
has an
an-
action
oh,
item.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here, happy to take that question.
thank you. So, I think it's highly likely, the Audit and Finance Committee will be recommending the board, and let's just assume that the board will also approve this. When Morgan Stanley is in possession of these refunded bonds, you're essentially the owner then, correct? And then you will be selling them to potential investors, correct?
Very, very similar. We act as underwriters. It's almost a simultaneous transaction where on the day of pricing, we gather a group of investors and then have orders placed for your bonds. And at which time, we signed a purchase contract which says we are buying these bonds from you, but it's really going to the investor immediately at closing.
That makes sense. So, does Morgan Stanley have anything in its protocols regarding the issuance of these types of funds to investors who will be acting responsibly? I'm speaking to any kind of ethics or moral values that Morgan Stanley may have to guide it in accepting investors. In other words, if we had an investor from a country that was invading free people, would Morgan Stanley say, no, we're not going to allow that investor to purchase these bonds?
Yeah, a great question. And we do obviously have guiding principles similar to as what you had mentioned. But in terms of your investor base for municipal bonds, it's typically insurance companies, bond funds such as PIMCO and those of nature, and then individual mom and pop is how we call it, individual retail investors. In addition, as the district selling the bonds, during the order period, you get to see exactly who's putting in orders, and you can also determine who you would like to give allocation to if that's something that you would like to participate in.
Yes, we would like to participate in that. I'm just checking with President Flamer. I'm not trying to add burdens to
No, it's
the
good.
district, but, given current events, I think many of us are thinking about how funds are being invested.
Sure. But 99% of the time, the buyers are insurance companies, mutual funds, bond funds, U.S. individuals.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
No problem.
Okay, so this is not an action item. I'm looking around at my trusty colleagues. Is there any question you have? Vice President Morrison?
And Barbara, anything I'd like to add?
President Flamer?
Nothing.
Is there anything else that any of you would like to add to this discussion?
For the regular board meeting, what time would you like us present?
Well, the regular board meeting starts at 1 o'clock, and I'm looking at President Flamer. I don't actually have that agenda in front of me. I know you're further down the agenda, and I don't think you really want to listen to our review of progress on board goals, et cetera.
It's 4.3 on the.
I mean, we could make you a time certain.
Yes, sure.
And then I would inform the board president, President Matthews, that you would be joining us to discuss 4.3 at, I don't know, what time?
Say 1:30?
1:30. Would that be good for you all?
It's fine for me.
Fine for me.
Same here.
Okay. Of course, you're welcome to listen to the entire board meeting too. It's always very exciting. So, we will look forward to having your input again at 1:30. I really appreciate your time and your patience with at least my questions. So, thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
You.
Yeah, you too. That takes us to the end of our agenda, I believe.
Yes.
Me at the moment, but I believe I can safely say we are adjourning the Audit and Finance Committee, and we will join the full board at 1 o'clock. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.